You've had the falling dream. Everybody has. You're asleep, everything's fine, and then the floor opens and you drop. Your whole body jerks. You wake up with your heart hammering. And the first thing you tell yourself is, that was just a dream, a muscle spasm, random brain noise, nothing. But there's a manuscript that's been sitting in the Ethiopian highlands for over 1600 years. And it doesn't call that a dream. It calls it a test. And it describes exactly what's being tested, who's running the test, and what the result means. That's dream number 1. There are 6 more. And by the time I get to number 7, you're going to have a hard time falling asleep tonight without thinking about what I told you. Subscribe if you're not already. This channel reads the manuscripts they don't want on your shelf. We're just getting started. I'm Daniel Voss. You're watching The Black Parchment. Now, before I walk you through all 7, if you're interested in getting your own personal reading based on Enochic tradition, I've put together on my website, all at one place. You put in your birth date and it tells you everything. The link is in the description, or scan this QR code. All right, 7 dreams, let's go. Here's what most people don't know about the Book of Enoch. Everyone talks about the Watchers. Everyone talks about the Nephilim. But chapters 83 through 90, the section scholars call the Book of Dream Visions, contains something different. Enoch doesn't describe dreams the way you'd expect. He doesn't say, I had a vision and it felt real. He says the opposite. He says the vision was real, and waking life is the limited version. The dream state in this text is where the restrictions come off, where you're exposed to things your waking body can't process. Dr. George Nicholsberg, who spent decades at the University of Iowa producing the most detailed academic commentary on First Enoch ever written, made a note about this section that most people skip past. He pointed out that the ge'ez word used for Enoch's dream state isn't the standard word for sleep. It's closer to removal. The body is removed, not resting, removed. That distinction matters for everything I'm about to tell you. Dream 1, the fall. Chapter 83, verses 2 through 4. Enoch describes being lifted during sleep and then released. Not gently, dropped. He writes that the sensation was a measurement, and the ge'ez term he uses, mezana, shares a root with the word for weighing grain on a scale. He's not describing vertigo, he's describing a weigh in. And what's being weighed, according to the passage, is attachment. How fast you reach for the ground, how hard you grab for the body you just left. The text says the ones who fall and jerk awake are the ones still tethered. The ones who fall and keep going, that's a different outcome. And Enoch doesn't describe that outcome in chapter 83. He saves it for later. Now here's what makes this strange. Modern sleep research, and I mean published, peer-reviewed work out of Harvard's Division of Sleep Medicine, classifies that falling jerk as a hypnic myoclonus, involuntary muscle contraction during the transition from wakefulness to sleep. Totally random. No function, no purpose, just a glitch. But they can't explain why it happens almost universally. Every culture, every age group, every era of recorded human history that mentions sleep describes this exact sensation. And no one has a mechanism for why. A 2016 study in the Journal of Neuroscience mapped the brain activity during hypnic jerks and found that the motor cortex fires in a pattern that doesn't match any other involuntary contraction. It behaves like a response, not a malfunction. a response to a stimulus the instruments can't detect. A text written over 2,200 years ago says the stimulus is real, and the response is you failing the test. Tell me what you think about that. I want to hear it in the comments. Dream 2. The place you've never been. This one's specific, and that's what makes it hard to dismiss. You've had a dream where you were somewhere, a building, a landscape, a room that you have never visited in your life. And it wasn't vague. It had detail, corners, lighting, a floor that felt like a specific material. You could describe it if someone asked. Chapters 17 through 36 of 1st Enoch are called the Cosmic Journeys. Enoch travels while his body is stationary, through locations that the text describes with architectural precision. Stone walls with specific coloring, temperatures, light sources that come from no visible origin. And he describes one location after another, each one with structural details that don't read like symbolism. They read like field notes. Dr. James Van der Kam at Notre Dame pointed out that the travel sections of 1st Enoch are unusual because they include spatial language, left, right, above, below, distance measurements, that you almost never find in apocalyptic literature. Prophetic visions in the ancient world were symbolic. A beast means a kingdom. A horn means a ruler. But Enoch doesn't write in symbols. He writes in directions. He walks through rooms and tells you what's on each wall. Here's the part the text adds that nobody talks about. Chapter 21, verse 6 contains a phrase that most translators fold into the previous sentence. But in the Ge'ez, it stands alone. And these places are known to those who have walked them before waking. That line implies the cosmic locations Enoch visits aren't exclusive to him. Other people go there. They just don't remember it the way he does. They remember a strange building, a room they can't place, a landscape that felt more real than real, but fades within an hour of waking. And here's the thing that should bother you. Enoch describes one of these locations, a place he calls the Chamber of the South Wind, with measurements, actual distances, not a great hall or a vast space, numbers, ratios, and the structural proportions he gives match. Almost exactly what we now understand about the geometry of deep cave systems formed by tectonic pressure. He had no way to know that. He had no frame of reference for subterranean geology, but he described it the way a surveyor would, in his sleep. You've had that dream, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the text says it's not a dream, it's a location. You were there. Dream 3. The dead person who visits you. And I want to be careful with this one because I know a lot of you have experienced it. You lose someone, a parent, a spouse, a friend, and one night, weeks or months later, they show up in your dream. Not the way they looked when they were sick, not faded, present, solid, looking at you like they have something to say. Most grief counselors will tell you that's your subconscious processing the loss. Memory consolidation, a coping mechanism, and maybe it is. But chapter 22 of 1st Enoch describes something that doesn't fit that explanation. Chapter 22 is where Enoch visits the chambers of the dead, 4 hollow places carved inside a mountain, each one holding a different category of departed soul. And in verse 3, there's a line that says, the souls in these chambers are assigned their appearances for visitation. Not that they choose to appear, not that they wander freely, assigned. It's an administrative word. There's a schedule, a format, and a purpose. The text adds something else. The Ge'ez uses a reflexive verb form for visitation, meaning the appearance of the dead to the living isn't for the dead person's benefit. It's for the living person's. The visit has a function, and the soul performing the visit is doing it under instruction. Here's the part that stays with me. The text says these visitations happen most often in what it calls the thin hours, a phrase that appears in the margin notes of one of the manuscripts R.H. Charles used for his 1906 translation. He didn't include it in the main text, didn't explain why. But the Ge'ez phrase translates roughly to the hours when the veil is least, not thinnest, least, as in almost not there. If you've had that dream, the one where someone you lost stood in front of you and you could feel them, tell me in the comments. I'm not going to explain it away. I just want to know how many of you have had it, because the number is going to be high. Dream 4, the one where you can't move. Sleep paralysis. You're awake, or you think you're awake, and your body won't respond. You can see the room, you can feel the bed, but nothing moves. And most people report a presence. Something in the room with them, sometimes standing in the corner, sometimes sitting on their chest, sometimes just there, in the air, watching. Neuroscience explains this cleanly. During REM sleep, your brain paralyzes your voluntary muscles to keep you from acting out your dreams. Sometimes you wake up before the paralysis lifts. The presence you feel is a byproduct of the amygdala firing in a threat assessment state while you're still partially dreaming. Clean, logical, solved. Except chapter 15, verse 11, describes something that matches every single detail. The text says the spirits of the Nephilim, the offspring of the Watchers, and human women were condemned to roam the earth after their physical bodies died. They are, in the text words, spirits without permanent flesh, bound to move among the sleeping. And the passage specifies that they are drawn to the body during the state between sleep and waking, the exact state where paralysis occurs. Not full sleep, not full waking, the gap. I want to show you something about the language here, because it changes the whole picture. The Ge'ez word used for the paralysis state isn't the word for frozen or stuck, it's tequami, and the root of that word means held for examination, like being detained, not trapped, detained, as in something is checking your credentials before releasing you back into your own body. And the text doesn't say the presence is hostile. That's what people assume. The text says the presence is identifying you, determining whether the body you're returning to is still assigned to you. Which means sleep paralysis, according to this manuscript, isn't a malfunction. It's a checkpoint. Now, number 5 is where this list shifts. Everything up to this point, you could argue, is coincidence. Pattern matching. Ancient people experiencing the same brain chemistry modern people experience and inventing explanations. Fine, but 5, 6, and 7 don't fit that argument. And 7 is the one that made me pull this whole video together. Dream 5, the voice that says your name. You've been almost asleep right at the edge and you hear someone say your name. Clear, not muffled, not distant. Someone standing in the room, speaking directly to you. You open your eyes. Nobody's there. Chapter 69 verse 14 contains a list of angel functions, not descriptions, functions, job titles, and one of them, an angel named Kasadia, is listed with a duty that most English translations render as assigner of names. but the Aramaic root in the Dead Sea Scroll, fragment 4Q203, one of the Book of Giants fragments found in Cave 4 at Qumran, breaks that phrase differently. It's not assigner of names, it's caller of the named. There's a difference. Assigning a name is bureaucratic. Calling the named is active. It means someone is saying your name, specifically yours. And they're doing it at the threshold between waking and sleep, because that's when, according to the broader Enochic system, your gate assignment is being confirmed. Every day, not once, daily. The text treats sleep as a reset, a nightly recalibration. And part of that recalibration involves confirming your identity, not your name in the human sense, but your assignment, your position in the system. The voice that says your name at the edge of sleep is not a hallucination. According to the manuscript, it's a roll call. Here's the thing that gets me about this. The text doesn't describe it as dramatic. There's no trumpet, no light, no vision. It's almost bureaucratic, like someone checking a list. This one, still here, still assigned, move on. That's what it reads like. It reads like a night shift supervisor walking through a facility and confirming that everyone is where they're supposed to be. Think about that for a second. A text from the 3rd century BC describes a nightly process where assigned beings confirm the identity of every sleeping person through vocalization of their name. That's not mysticism. That's not poetry. That's an attendance system. And whoever designed it built it to run during the only hours when the subject cannot interfere. If you have heard your name at the edge of sleep, and statistically, about 70% of people report this at least once, drop it in the comments. I want to know if the description I just read matches what it felt like. Dream 6. You're being chased. Everyone has this dream. Something is behind you. You can't see it clearly, but you know it's there. You run. Your legs don't work right. The hallway stretches. The stairs multiply. You can't get away. And the thing never catches you. It just stays behind you, close enough that you can feel it. Now, most dream analysis treats the chasing dream as anxiety, unresolved stress, your brain rehearsing a threat response. That's the standard model, and it's not unreasonable. But chapter 16 verse 1 has a line that does something different with this. The text describes the disembodied Nephilim spirits, the same ones from Dream 4, and says they pursue the living during the hours of removal to learn the shape of their fear, not to cause fear, to learn its shape. Let that sit for a second. The text is saying the pursuit has a data collection function. Something is chasing you, not to catch you, not to harm you, but to map the architecture of what frightens you. Your specific fear, its dimensions, its texture, because the information is useful to something. And the Ge'ez term for shape in this passage, akwam, is the same word used in chapter 60 to describe the structure of Leviathan and Behemoth. Physical architecture, not emotional, physical, as in your fear has a structure, and something is mapping it while you sleep. And there's a detail in the next verse that nobody cites. The text says the results, the shape of what was learned, are carried upward, not stored, not filed, carried to something. There's a recipient. The chasing dream isn't a standalone event. It's the collection phase of an intelligence cycle, and the information goes somewhere after it's gathered. That changes the chasing dream completely. It's not your brain running drills. It's surveillance. The thing that never catches you was never trying to. it already got what it came for. Dream 7. And I saved this for last because it's the one that made me make this video. You fall asleep, normal. Nothing unusual. You dream, or maybe you don't remember. And then you wake up and something is different. Not in the room, in you. Something shifted while you were gone. You can't name it. You can't point to it. But the person who woke up is not exactly the same person who fell asleep. You feel it in your chest. A weight, or the absence of a weight. Something was added or something was taken, and you have no memory of the transaction. Chapter 14, verses 8 through 13. This is the passage where Enoch describes his own ascent, the most detailed out-of-body account in the entire text. And there's a line in verse 11 that stops me every time I read it. After Enoch passes through the first structure, a wall of crystal with tongues of fire, the text says, "And I was made other than I had been." Not, I felt different. Not, I was changed. I was made other. The verb is causative. Something else did it to him. And the text provides no explanation for what was changed or why. It just states the fact and moves on. Now here's what most people miss. Enoch's ascent in chapter 14 happens during a sleep state. He says so at the beginning of the passage. "The visions of my sleep showed me." This isn't a waking experience. He's horizontal, eyes closed, body stationary. And when he returns, when the vision ends, he is, in his own words, other than he had been. Dr. Michael Knibb's 1978 Oxford translation handles this passage carefully. He notes that the Ge'ez phrase for made other, telewatu, doesn't appear anywhere else in 1st Enoch. It's used once, for this moment only, and it's a term that implies irreversible alteration. Not temporary, not a feeling, a permanent structural change to the person experiencing it. You've had this. You've woken up and something was different, and you couldn't explain it. Not rested differently, not emotionally different, altered. And the text says that's because you were. Something happened to you while the body was removed, and the you that came back isn't the same you that left. Now, I want to show you something about all 7 of these, because the pattern is what convinced me this isn't random. Every dream on this list corresponds to a function in the Enochic system. Falling is measurement. Travel is reconnaissance. The dead visiting is assigned a communication. Paralysis is identity verification. The voice is roll call. Being chased is intelligence gathering. Waking up different is modification. 7 functions. 7 experiences that every human being on Earth reports across every culture, every century, every language. Not some people, everyone. And in the Book of Enoch, none of them are filed under dreams. They're filed under operations, scheduled, repetitive, system-level operations that happen during the hours when the body's awareness drops below the threshold. The text doesn't think you're dreaming. The text thinks you're being processed. There are exactly 7, not 8, not 6. 7, which is the number the Enochic system uses for completion cycles. 7 archangels. 7 mountains in the divine geography. 7 stars in the prison of chapter 21. And 7 things that happen to you every night that you've been dismissing as brain noise. That's the part I can't get past. Not any individual dream. The number, the structure, the fact that each one maps to a specific operational function, and the functions together form a complete cycle. Measurement, reconnaissance, communication, verification, assignment confirmation, intelligence, collection, modification. That's not a list of dreams. That's a maintenance protocol, and it runs every night. I'm not going to tell you what that means. I genuinely don't know. What I can tell you is what the text says, and the text says sleep is not rest. Sleep is access. The hours when you're unconscious are the hours when the system has clearance to interact with you directly, because you're not in the way. You, the waking, conscious, choosing version of you, are an obstacle to whatever this process is. And sleep removes the obstacle. There's a question this raises that I haven't been able to answer, and I've been thinking about it for weeks. If the text is right, if sleep is operational access and every human being undergoes the same 7-function cycle every night, then what's the finished product? What does the system look like when the maintenance is done? The text describes the process. It never describes the purpose. And that silence, that gap where the answer should be, is the one thing in the Book of Enoch that I keep coming back to, because it means either the author didn't know or he knew. And that was the one thing he wouldn't write down. Think about tonight. You're going to close your eyes. Your body will go still. Your conscious mind will step aside. And if this text is right, 7 operations are going to run on you before morning. You won't remember most of them. You might catch one, a fall, a voice, a place that doesn't exist, and you'll tell yourself it was just a dream. But a manuscript that survived 23 centuries says otherwise. And the most unsettling part isn't what it claims. It's that it describes your experience, the exact experience you've had, the one you've never been able to explain, with the specificity of a technical manual written by someone who understood the system from the inside. This channel doesn't stop pulling. Neither should you. Subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.